into our masterclass today. If you guys could, I would love to see your faces or your expressions as we get going here with Amy. So if you want to turn your camera on and say hello and make new friends, we can all wave. Hey guys, thank you. Thanks for joining us today on this Tuesday afternoon with my dear friend Amy Balsters, who is joining us from, guess, the Northeast up there. I'm not sure. I know you're close to DC. I'm not sure if you're Maryland.
Yeah, Virginia.
Virginia, that's right. You're in Alexandria. But we're really excited just to have a fun hour-long chat with her to get to know her a little bit better. We're going to walk through some of like how she got started in design and also her Bouquet boot camp. So if you guys have any questions about any of these things, please, you can put them in the chat, or I think at the end we'll have like a really good Q&A. So I'm going to ask everybody to have a question ready to go for Amy. We're going to put her on the hot spot just as, because she is like an amazing floral designer if you're not already aware of her. But welcome, Amy, to this April edition of our Hills Masterclass.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. We're so excited about this. We have these master classes once a month, and we've had a variety of different educators, but I think your class is going to really resonate with a lot of our florists because you have been there on the front lines, really creating all of these bouquets, and you have mastered, I think, a technique that people are really raving about. I've been watching along on your Instagram stories, but yeah, would you like to introduce yourself and do like a little background on how you became the Floral Coach?
Yes, thank you. Such an honor to be with you. Thanks for inviting me. It's so it's always a joy to share a little bit about my story, and hopefully for your attendees, whether they're here live or whether they're on the recording, that this will be not just to hear my story, but that you can take something of value away from our time together that you can apply right away to your work. That's my hope and goal for our chat today. So my name is Amy Balsters. My business is called the Floral Coach. I've been in the floral industry just shy of 20 years. I started getting very classically trained at a floral design school in California. And I was really fortunate to have this classical training. I recognize that this is an industry that a lot of us are self-taught, or we sort of piecemeal together our education. And I didn't realize how lucky I was that I had this kind of mentorship early on and this really structured education to get me kind of off on the right foot, working as a freelancer and into retail, and then into high-end special events, and then now as a design teacher. So I had this foundational training that, again, I think you're 19 years old, and maybe all of us in college don't realize how lucky we are to have education. And I think I just thought, well, everybody has this training, right? And as I have moved in many sectors of the floral industry around the country and within the different places I've lived, I've really seen just such a lack of foundational knowledge. And I recognize that we now have more resources than ever for training and teaching, but a lot of things are just passed down, right, through being bench trained or having a mentor. And so I'm really passionate about getting back to the foundations of just good, solid floristry. I don't claim to know everything. I never have. I feel like I'm constantly a student of floristry. I'm constantly learning. I attend workshops. I go meet with designers and learn their ways. The learning never ends in a craft like floristry. And so what I've really tried to focus on in the last 4 or 5 years of my business is bringing these foundational techniques to florists, whether they're brand new to the industry or they're 10-year, 25-year veterans. Sometimes we sort of lose our way, I think, and we pick up some bad habits or things that maybe just aren't efficient. I think we can all relate to the grind and just finding sort of this placement pattern of like, this is kind of how I always do it. And that's totally fine if that's working, but we have this need, I think, to create, which is why we got into flowers, and being able to create efficiently and to be able to create profitably, but also to create from a place of intentionality is really my whole premise of teaching. It's to hopefully answer the question of why. Why do we put this here? Why does this work? Why does this design not work? Is there a balance issue? Is there a color issue? Is there a proportion issue? So I want to get into the meat and the bones. And, for many years, I went around and took these really expensive workshops and kind of worshiped at the altar of my celebrity designers that I adored, like, oh my God. And I did pick up a few things here and there, but what I thought lacked often is the answer to this question of why. Why did you choose that vessel over this vessel? Why did you choose that flower? Why did you place that there? And I just saw this kind of craving and need for not just me, but everyone in the room that I was with, of answering that question using the principles and elements of design. And so I reached back into my 20-year-old training and really started exploring why this stylistically some designs were working and they weren't, in this kind of loose, airy garden style that everybody was kind of moving towards. I mean, I came up in very tight, round balls, right? The early 2000s. Yes. So everything was really tight. And there's nothing wrong with that style, but things have shifted a little bit to more relaxed, garden style, gathered florals that clients are asking for. And I really struggled achieving this look. I was not naturally good at it. Everything was like a ball with antennas or arms, I say, this kind of like, right. And I couldn't get this movement and breath to my work. And I just thought there has to be answers here, and I'm not getting them. So I'm going to go back into my training and find those answers. And I've really dedicated my entire career now to connecting the dots for designers and helping them understand their work and how to apply the principles and elements and layer that into their own understanding, which just empowers designers to look at their work more objectively. And I think that's a really important process in growing, is just taking a step back and understanding objectively what you're looking at without the emotional sort of drama that I think we put ourselves through and how we judge ourselves and the struggles we may have with our work.
Well, I first saw you at I think it was a design sanctuary workshop.
That's great.
It was really, really amazing. Design aesthetic was just so on point, what I think everybody was craving. And it's like, I think there's a lot of lack of confidence when it comes to like, I'm not really sure that I know how to execute this well, but I really think that through listening to you and just the way you were instructing us, it was like, gosh, that makes so much sense. And I like that. So what is something that you really ask yourself as far as like, why this design when you first get started? How do you approach that?
Yeah, so there's kind of a list of really the principles and elements. I hear sometimes this kind of verbiage floating around like, oh, I don't know, you just kind of got to go with your gut or just feel your way through it. And I think when you're learning something new, that's a really damaging perspective, to be honest. I think that we need some guidelines. We need guidelines to look at our work and say, why does this feel like it works? Instead of just using intuition, we have the principles and elements to guide us. And I sort of like, I want to remove my earrings proverbially when I hear that, because I've seen a lot of frustrated designers hear this kind of feedback of like, oh, well, this is like, I think it just needs a little more of this. But why? Why does it need more? Answer the question. So the questions that I ask myself are literally through the principles and elements. What does this design look like in terms of the visual balance, right? Visual balance and physical balance are really important in any design, because that's kind of the first thing we see is weight, right? Is something look like it's falling over? Does it feel too top heavy? Does it feel too sunk below? So if that's a form issue, I may need to shift some things around to create that balance. That's the very first thing I look at, specifically because we're going to make a bouquet today. Typically, bouquet making is around bridal or wedding. Not always. We're going to talk about market bouquets, but the general bridal bouquet, someone's holding this. And if it feels like it's going to tip over, you have a balance issue, right? We need to put more stuff on the other side. So I'm literally going through a checklist of color distribution, proportion, ratio, scale, all of those things. And I don't know if any of your audience here has followed me or heard me say this, but I feel like I say this a lot. So I apologize if I'm repeating myself. But something that's really important as a designer is to understand that we solve the design problem at the ordering level. I'll say this again, it's that important, which is kind of where details comes into play. Yeah, it's like, this is a good details segue here, because we literally solve the design problem at the unsexiest part of what we do, which is sourcing our ingredients and collecting the right shapes, colors, and sizes of our material so that when we sit down at our bench to work, or stand, I should say, who sits anymore, but we're standing at our bench, we're really assembling, we're assembling that puzzle that we've already solved. And I think that to make a quick shift to see major impact in your work right away is to evaluate what you order. And I've worked with designers from all over the country and the world. I've heard it all. I've lived in a market that did not have flowers that were easy to find. And I get it's easier for San Francisco florists to get sexy flowers. I'm sorry, it's just true. You guys have it really good, okay? There are a lot of us that don't have that where we live. And we have to work a little bit harder to add some interest and bring in some unique things into our work that is going to help us kind of stand out, feed that creative part of us. That may be a bit from a plant. They may be a little bit of forage, a little bit of local, a little from a farmer's market, right? So we do have to work a little harder, I think, to find those unique pieces. But I would say that evaluating your material is the absolute number one thing that you can do to shift your work right now. If you order the same exact flowers, your work will always look exactly the same. Yeah. It's a profitable way to run a business, but there's a balance between you creatively dying on the branch, if you will, and pushing yourself into a little bit more space creatively around what it is that you're trying to accomplish in your work and the types of clients you're trying to attract. So there's a push-pull with that, but I think that's a really key thing.
Yeah. So kind of backing up a little bit, you were talking about sexy flowers, and those that are in California are really, really quite lucky. We get a lot of fantastic blooms almost throughout the whole year. But I know that's where you said you started designing. So can you roll back and where you first found that interest? Because was it more from an art side, or just you like the botanical aspects, or was it because there was sexy, intriguing flowers like that beautiful iris that you showed me a while ago? I know you're going to share.
Yeah.
But, please fill us in. How did it start?
How it started. So I'll try to keep this kind of short because this is a really long story. If you want to hear the whole story, I have a bunch of podcasts I've been on my website, thefloralcoach.com. So if you scroll down on resources, I've been interviewed on, I think, 4 or 5 podcasts, and I tell the story way more in depth. So it's a little bit emotional. It's a little bit of a sad story, but I think, Corinne and I have talked a little bit about our histories and our childhoods. And
8 hours, we went to brunch. We took a brunch. It was supposed to be an hour, and 8 hours later, we were going through.
It's a lot to unpack, right? We're like, and then one time, it's like, oh my God, I found a soul sister in our trauma, but I had a really pretty rough childhood, and I think a lot of us do. And I had this little patch in the group in Southern California, very much the working class part, not the super wealthy TV part. And there was, we lived on a boulevard in a busy city, very much a city kind of life. And we had this small patch of grass, and there was this 3 blackberry bushes that we planted for my mom for Mother's Day one year. And we didn't have much of a garden. We planted a few things, but this row, these 3 blackberry bushes just went nuts. I mean, they just, California, everything grows so easily. And they sort of created this little cove for me. And I would spend hours in this blackberry little nook, if you will. And I felt so safe there. I just felt so comforted. And I think that as a child, I hear this a lot when florists tell their story, but even as a child, I was just magnetically drawn to nature, whether it was daisy chains, or I have distinct memories of the kind of grass we had growing up, or sunflowers that grew. I've always paid attention to what's growing around me, just in this highly magnetic way. And even at 7 years old, I wanted to be a florist. There was a little flower shop, a little retail shop. If you have a retail shop, thank you, because you're doing incredibly important work in our world, and we need you to keep doing it. And so I would walk down there. I would ride my pink bike to this flower shop. It was called Atrium Florist. And I would just walk around. It was really small, because people thought probably where are your parents? And I just would do laps and, push my nose on the little glass doors and see their very FTD arrangements. This was not a magical space. But I'd always peer to the back and see the ribbons. And I just sort of thought, wow, this is such a fancy job for really fancy people. And it wasn't until I started working as a catering server. I was 15 years old in LA, all these fancy events. I'm a lowly, pate server. And I just saw event flowers for the first time. And it was like, huge installations and beautiful spilling. And it was like, who does this? So it really sparked my interest in special events. And I come from a family of caterers, food. Both my sisters went to culinary school. We were really just deep in hospitality our whole life. And so special event industry was a natural transition for me. But specifically in floristry, my mom is a really naturally gifted artist, color, texture. She could build anything, she could paint anything. She's just really, really talented. And I think that I was I had a natural knack for art. I could paint okay, I could take decent photos, but I never really excelled in the arts. It was like I was just kind of, I would say, sort of middle of the pack until it came to flowers. And I was 19 years old.
I got it.
Thank you. I don't know how to fix that. I was 19 and I was making some really bad life decisions, and I was kind of hitting rock bottom. I'd gotten fired from my job at Red Robin. I was just like a wayward soul, and it was time to buckle down. And I was encouraged to just try anything, just take some classes, try to get back on your feet. And I was like, well, I've always wanted to try floral design. And I went to this little community college program. It was totally just a random pickup class. And I remember this day distinctly, even though I have a pretty poor memory, but I walked into this room and there was fluorescent lights and we had this big block of flower foam, this super ugly little green tray. And, they gave us a big hand bundle of leather leaf, a couple stems of pink mini carnations. And we had a terrible teacher. She could care less. She was just like, you just shove it in our, but man, I will never forget that day, because as I'm sitting there pushing these little stems in and touching these flowers, I knew I was hooked. And it was like a drug for me, truly. I was addicted. Every class, every book, every volunteer opportunity, joined every board, went to every possible thing I could consume. And that's when I found this accredited program at Golden West College. Some of you maybe even went through that program. It's really wonderful. Gail Call was the teacher for many years, my first floral mentor. And, I just it became my purpose in life to do this. And I'm still doing it 20 years later.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it started
as a student, but now you're like a full-blown teacher, and you're being sent like all over the country, I think, to do this for different retail spaces. I know you were just in Dallas for a 3-day workshop. And can you tell us a little bit about this? Because there might be some people listening that would love to bring you into their studios, and about your Bouquet boot camp and how you came up with it, I guess.
Yeah. So I started teaching, and when you're not famous on Instagram, you sort of have to just hustle, and like people don't know who you are, and they maybe don't know that your experience level. And I just thought, what, the best thing I can do is just leverage. When I started teaching, I was getting asked, hey, can you teach a class for me? Hey, I'm really struggling. And I realized this is so not just easy for me. I'm naturally just a very gifted communicator. I'm really talented, I think, at making complex ideas simple. My dad was a corporate trainer for 30 years. I think I just got a lot of him. And so I just started realizing, wow, I can really move the needle for florists. I can really explain the why, which I didn't see a lot of. And I thought, well, I'm just going to hit the road. I'm going to hit everybody I know who would be willing to host me for a workshop. And I'm just going to hit the road. And I did. And as I started traveling around the country teaching, I just realized I saw the same problem. People really struggle with making bouquets. And I understood that, because coming out of tight and round to open form, right? That's the difference, closed form versus open form. Building bouquets with balance and negative space, and that is really challenging, you guys. I mean, you guys know this as florists. This is not an easy style to do. It looks effortless. It is not. So there's a process. There's some layering going on. There's really intentionality in the ingredient selection you need. This is a much more complicated puzzle than just tighten it up, round and mound, boom, right? So to be honest, I just knew I can make a difference. I literally can move the needle. I can teach people how to do this that are craving this information. And so as I realized I have a little boy at home, and I realized, God, okay, I've been traveling all over. I really need to rein it in. I can't just keep going to every state that somebody needs a class. I got to find a better way. I niched down and I really focused on, okay, the first thing I want to tackle is bouquet making. And I'm going to create a class just fully saturated on this process of how to think about from the foundation. We do speed drills, we learn the mechanics, we learn the basics, whether you're retail, you do pop-ups, you do market bouquets for if you're a farmer florist, all the way to very technically challenged cascade styles. And so how do I pack all that in? And I did for a long time. We did it in one day. We did some color theory. We did design lectures, a lot. My students are like, fire hose. But we just
got an MBA in one day. No.
And every single time it sold out. I started teaching them all over the country. Every single time, sell out, sell out, sell out. And I thought, this tells me that there is just a huge need for this education. And so that eventually evolved. Used to be called the One Day Bouquet Intensive. We rebranded it to Bouquet Bootcamp, which I think sounds a little easier to say. And then we launched, an online course that's done incredibly well. We've had hundreds of designers go through it. And I do a very limited amount of hands-on. We've turned it into a 2-day workshop now. Because what I kept getting is, so after every workshop, I'd have every student fill out a feedback form. I'd take that feedback and I would learn like exactly what they needed to change. Okay, they need more time here. They weren't happy with the food selection. We need to make it smaller. So I've just finessed and fine-tuned this for years into this 2-day, 8-person, really, I think, very transformative experience where we tackle some mindset stuff. That's a big part of my story, is just not believing I was worthy of my work, feeling a lot of imposter syndrome. And it kept me very safe. I just wouldn't reach outside of what I could always do for color, what I always did for form. It kept me restrained. And so we talk a little bit about that. We spend a lot of time on design theory. We really dig in. We spend 3 hours on color theory, multiple color theory exercises. And then we really understand the mechanics of the spiral bouquet. So I teach the European spiral. I did not come up with this. This has been around for hundreds of years. In Europe, this is incredible. This is the main technique that's used. But I think what's unique about what I've done with the spiral is demonstrated its powerful flexibility in not just creating round bouquets, but really what you'll see as I demonstrate in a little bit, just the power of utilizing that geometry to create any shape you want and to go as big as you want or small as you want. And I can't tell you, I haven't talked to you in a little bit, Kareem, but I have had so many stories. I'm going to be telling them at Team Flower. I'll save them for Team Flower. I'm presenting there. I have some incredible stories that students just share with me all the time, past florists that have said, I forgot the day of this wedding and I had to make like 8 bouquets in 2 hours, or I forgot this party and I had to make like 30 centerpieces and I got it done using spiral. So I'm just continuing to see the evidence of how important this technique is. And I've sort of like, I'm like a proselytizer for the spiral, like it's magic. Because my heart is, after running a business for a lot of years, not feeling super profitable, not being very profitable, burning myself out, I realized that part of this is twofold. I wasn't charging properly. I needed better boundaries with my clients, but also I needed to go back into efficient design processes. It is not good to be spending 45 minutes to an hour and a half on a bridal bouquet. We don't need to be spending that much time on them. And there are much more efficient ways to design. I have a production background, high-end wedding and event production. So we do 5-6 weddings every single weekend. And I just see a lot of inefficiency in the process for designers. And it's really become my heart to I feel like show a better way to say, you can enjoy your business and you're doing flowers in a way that doesn't harm your body, in a way that you can work more quickly, which is a direct connection to your profit. So this all goes back to intentionality in what we order, how we price, how we work with our recipes, how we work with our staff. Like there's an intentionality that I care so much about. And that's kind of my message, if you will, is be intentional with your work, with your people, with your pricing, because our work matters. It's so important. And we're these kind of messengers of love and connection. And our work means a lot, and we should do it well. We should be proud of the products we put out, and we should be professionals. And I just see a lot of really sloppy work, and it makes me feel sad for our industry, because I think we deserve better, and I think our customers deserve better. And so there's no such thing as perfect work. There's no kind of some idealistic thing, but I think that I would love to see our industry cared about as much as culinary, right? We're doing art. And I know after a beautiful meal, I've sat down and been like, that was art. I want to see that with work.
Yeah, well, and I know that, with the software, that's really our intention behind it, is to help people be more profitable and be really intentional with the recipes that they're able to create. But the part where we stop is like the design. So I think that by someone going through just work, that you're able to help them achieve that. Their labor, they shouldn't spend all that time making those bouquets. That's where you're going to lose the most, because your time is just as valuable of a resource as your physical like products that you're buying. And I think that that's where I think a lot gets lost or is left on the table. So I love that you're so passionate about like efficiency in even the way that you hold and handle your body, because I even know, like, even this last month, I think you've been dealing with some hand issues. So it's like something that our florists, as we age through doing this business, you really want to not only be profitable, but like taking care of yourself. So that's, I think, one of the main things that you kind of cover or kind of try to teach. And then it's them putting those best practices into play too. So it's like, hey, we can give you this great software, but if you don't use it, as much as it's supposed to be, then you won't be as profitable as you can be. And I think it's the same like with design skills, or like how you hold or handle your body or pick things up, or those intentions. So I don't know if you could want to go into that a little bit.
I think the best thing that I've heard, the best feedback I've I've heard some really beautiful, powerful things, and I just am humbled, honestly. It's like, wow, I didn't set out to be famous or a celebrity or Instagram likes. I really care about our industry, and I wanted to see florists sort of regain their confidence and power in their work, that they could work quickly and efficiently, still get the result they needed without the crisis, the drama, the emotion. I've been there spending 2.5 hours on a bridal bouquet that was falling apart, and it just made me question my future in the industry. And I just thought, you know what, if I don't adapt, if I don't learn some of these new ways of building bouquets, or with, any of this style, I don't know if I can actually compete. And that made me feel so sad. And I just thought, gosh, we can raise our level of skill and confidence and do our work better. But to your point, this kind of to what you're saying, like, we need to use the tools, we need the training. This is an evolving industry, like fashion, like food, like anything that has an artistic sort of form to it. And that training, I think, doesn't ever really end. There's some designers that just refuse to see any other perspective, and that's okay if it works for them. But I'm really interested in hearing and receiving and accepting all the different thoughts out there around our work, because if somebody has a better way to do something, I want to be the first one to save time and money, right? So I think having some flexibility around our technique is important to growth, and that requires a level of humility, and it also requires a level of ego to say, maybe I don't know it all. Maybe somebody else has a different perspective around this that might help me move the needle. So yeah, I do travel a little bit. I've been trying to travel less, but I will go into a shop, I will go to an event business, and I'll work with their team and train their team on the foundations, whether it's color theory, retail, building efficiency in their general processes or design processes. But this is kind of like a very niche thing I do. And, it's expensive. It's expensive to bring me out. It's expensive to pay the trainer, the whole team. And so it's not for everyone. But I think that if we're the owners of our business, we can get that education, and we can either share the mechanics of that. I've had so many people tell me, oh my God, I literally showed my 14-year-old how to do this, and my engineer husband was in here making bouquets with me. Like, this is totally doable. Like, there is such a Yeah, I mean, just some of my favorite feedback is like, I feel confident now. And I honestly was able to like pass this off to somebody. I'm like, I'm in a place in my own business where I'm super busy. My teaching business has blown up and I am turning down more work than I can do because there's such a big need here. But my hope is that like designers learn this and then they teach their people this thing so that they're delegating, right? Like you can teach the basics of this, then you can go back in and do that finishing work. But the foundational spiral will change your business. I mean, if you don't already know the technique, it will change how you work truly. And I say that with utter confidence because I've seen it in the lives of hundreds and hundreds of designers I've worked with, where the stories I hear just about their efficiency, their confidence, their ability to work very quickly is changes the game for them. And that's, again, this isn't like, oh my gosh, Amy's such a genius. It's that I'm reintroducing, I think, an old friend that a lot of times people are like, oh, I've done that, doesn't really work. I've tried that, it's not really my thing. It takes practice. And I tell my designers, I have no magic wand here, guys. You came to the workshop, you took the course. Like you said with details, you have to practice. You have to really digest it in a way that then you can start pushing yourself to the limit of its possibilities. And I think that's my hope, is that people take this information and they build on it.
Well, and I think it's something to explore. And if anybody out there that's a details member would be interested in maybe us putting together like a details, like 3-day workshop somehow that would go through like the software aspects, or also bringing in like Amy or some other teachers. If you guys think that this would be like a valued class, you know, we have never hosted any kind of workshop before. So I know it's on our radar for this next 12 months, but Amy, we'd love to get you there. You're going to give us a little demonstration of this spiral technique. So this is always fun. We did one other class, I think with Jenny Thomason, where people made along a bouquet. So we didn't give you guys any recipes. Amy give a demonstration. So if you guys have any questions about any of her techniques as she's going. We do have a couple comments from Nancy Gardner. She says, "Go Amy, visual balance represent. I am ready to send all my young designers to you because they tune me out on principles of design. Know the rules." And then, yeah, Kim Tavendale says, "I had a wedding on Sunday with no flowers except for the bride's bouquet and 2 boutonnieres. It was so sad looking. Bridesmaids had no bouquets, no centerpieces on the tables. It looked terribly unfinished." Hey, that's our job as salespeople. You need to remind people of their regret if they do not do more flowers. So Dara said, "Yes, I would love details to host a workshop." And thank you, Dara. Like, I think that we will definitely consider it after this. And then Ghislaine says, "Can you use the spiral technique with tropical flowers?"
Yeah, you sure can. You sure can. And I think that's the beauty of the spiral, is that if you follow any of these, there's a lot of Asian designers in Europe. If you follow some of these accounts of, you know, trained European or a lot of different Asian designers, Singapore, Thailand, China, a lot of times you see the bouquets that they make, and they're huge. I mean, they're like, there's some of these enormous bouquets, they're all using the spiral technique. And it's really interesting. It's really not new. It's not like, oh, this groundbreaking thing she's talking about. But I think that's what's so intriguing to me about it, is that it's versatility and the ability for a designer to still hold with one hand this bouquet that is bigger than half their body. How does that work, right? They're not using a pack of Oasis waterproof tape to hold that together. They're using geometry, which is the spiral. And that is very intriguing to me as a designer, because it has everything to do with balance. And I think that the more that you dig into this foundational technique, the deeper that ocean becomes of exploration. I think it's easy to be like, I know that. But if you want to push it, there's so many ways to push yourself. So yeah, you can use it. I think with anything, I've used very fleshy stems and made a spiral. Typically with fleshy stems, you use more of a parallel technique, so you don't crush the stems, but I've successfully made daffodil bouquets. I think it's all in the touch and it's all in the binding. So you can't use like twine or something tough. You need to use a paper-based floral tape, or one of my favorites, which is called Oasis Bind It tape, which is a silicone-based product. So I'll show you a couple of those things. I know we don't have like a ton of time, so I'm going to keep my demo a little bit tight.
Yeah.
I have a quick question here about hosting a workshop outside of Dallas. So Dareth, thank you for your question. I have only 2 workshops left this year in 2022. They're both in Dallas. So I will say I get asked to come all over the country, not because I'm so great, but just because I know it's expensive to travel, leave your families, leave your homes. The reality is, to host my workshop, it takes days of preparation. We bring in so many flowers. There's a huge process we have where we literally have a minute by minute itinerary. It's a highly orchestrated experience so that the students get as much value as possible. So when we produce this workshop, it's a tremendous amount of effort. It's not thrown together. It's not fluffy, super meaty, and it's really, really intensive. So in order to do that, we need space that has a cooler, some working tables, front of the house, back of the house. So it actually isn't been that easy to find locations around the country that can easily host me for 4.5 to 5 days where I need the space. So Dallas is a really dear friend of mine, has a flower shop there. She's closed on the weekends. She's been an incredible host to me. And she like literally is the biggest supporter of Bouquet Bootcamp. And we come in and take over her front of her shop for days, setting everything up, getting everything completely ready. We do recipe polls. And then we also have, so designers build 4 different bouquets. And that takes a lot of coordination and work to pull the recipes and have all that done. And then they make a designer's choice from like a flower bar. So that's a lot of information, but my point is it's not easy for me to do this everywhere. And so I am not planning any more this year. I have literally 5 seats for the rest of the year in 2020.
But you are speaking at Cal Flowers, I think. I read.
That's true. We are doing like a 20-30 minute quick market bouquet demo. So it's not the 2-day in-depth bridal bouquet bootcamp. It's really just for just to show the spiral. But yes, I will be in Cal Flowers with you in San Diego. It's gonna be amazing.
If you guys aren't going, you should totally go.
Oh my God, it's gonna be awesome.
Amazing.
It's gonna be so fun. We're gonna have so much fun. So yeah, I think the online course is a really good place to start. It is super meaty. I don't even get it to everything in the hands-on that I do in the online course. I spent 1.5 years writing it, had it audited by AIFD designers. I had it audited by an online course consultant. We spent a lot of time. It's pretty DIY produced, but like the content is really deep and in depth. And I have a free class, you guys. If you go to my website, thefloralcoach.com, at the top, I have like a 90-minute free bouquet class. So go watch.
We're going to share that to everybody on the call later today. So
you'll learn a ton there. It'll be even more in depth than we have time for today because we're doing kind of partial interview, partial demo as I get my flowers ready. But yeah, that's a really great place to start. I've had a ton of people. I mean, I think we've had several thousand people now go through that, and I get some really amazing feedback from that free class. So you can go watch it. And in the end of the free class, I talk about my online course. So I talk about exactly what's included. And, you know, I get asked a lot, like, is this just for bridal? It's so not just for bridal. Every florist needs to know this technique because I have so many retail clients who are like, this class changed my life, literally changed how I run my business, how efficient I am, how much, like how less product we use, how I train my designers. So it's really, I mean, obviously it's my course, but I poured a ton of effort into making sure that it was meaty and impactful. And it's focused on the principles and elements, design application, color theory, and then 3 different bouquets. So it's packed, and I think it's well worth the money in my personal opinion.
Well, and you know, something Amy and I've been talking about too, and I don't know if you mind me sharing this, but while we were having brunch, we were like, it would be great to have like an Amy collection of like special recipes that she might have designed, but also that she could maybe go through and do like form flowers, line flowers, and, you know, just like those fluttery flowers, and what you should have to make like the perfect bouquet, because you kind of need a nice mixture of all those things. But I definitely would love her opinion on that. If you guys want to see that like send us a message and say, yes, we want that from Amy. So let us know. But so what pitfalls that when people are making bouquets? I see you getting started there.
Yes, I'm just doing a little bit of cleaning here and editing of my stems before we begin. And I explain this a lot more in the free class and in my paid course, so you can kind of check that out. There's a lot of intention that goes into cleaning your flowers. It's actually an important part of the design process. So the ordering, the cleaning and editing, and then the assembly. It's kind of a three-part thing. So I'm kind of working through the second part real quickly here as we talk, but major bouquet blunders, overstuffing. I see this all the time, overstuffing bouquets, stem breakage, excessive mechanics. So I see a lot of Oasis waterproof tape. That is such a crutch, guys. You don't need all that tape, I promise you. It adds bulk and weight. It can damage your stems. Sure, if you're making a huge thing with proteas and you need it, I get it. But I've often seen floral demos where the designer starts with 30 pieces of tape. And I'm like, something I want you to know is that, it's not about being right or wrong. It's about what is most efficient, what's going to take you the least amount of time, and what's going to allow you to make changes to that bouquet as needed. And at the end of a bouquet, that's really, to be honest, is where the magic happens. I tell my designers, you're overthinking it in the beginning. You got to get your materials in your hand, get that bouquet 60, 70, 80% assembled. And that's when you start to do that fine tuning. What I see so often is designers start and they're overthinking. They're trying to move things around in the beginning. It's not time for that yet. I joke again, I'm kind of a drill sergeant a little bit in my boot camp. It's called boot camp for a reason, you guys.
All right. You're married to a military guy too, so I get it.
Yeah, my husband is Air Force, 17 years. We move every few years. And he's such a gentle soul, but I'm more the drill sergeant. But what I do is, listen, we got to kind of push past some of that perfectionistic tendency if we're going to get stuff done faster. It's not about giving up the design aesthetic. It's that in bouquet making, everything's going to shift. So you've got to get the ingredients in your hand to a certain point. There's a layering process. I start with mass blooms. I build up, for me, I build up to smaller mass blooms, form flowers, and then I finish with line. And so everybody has a little bit of a different approach to the way they make bouquets. Again, this isn't about being right or wrong. This is about how you get the job done quickly and how you get the result. There's a faster, more efficient way to do that. I'm interested in that. So I spent too many years giving away my time and money and energy through overthinking. And when I really started to finesse this process, I realized, oh my gosh, the answer is all right here. It's in the spiral. So I'm just, making sure that my stems are clean. This is, again, if you have followed me or know anything about what I do and say, I have a little tagline. It's clean. Yeah.
Do you have what color flowers are you going to be working with today? And did you get these from your garden or?
So some of them came from a local farm from Grateful Gardeners, are good friends of mine. They grow these incredible tulips and they gave me these beautiful tulips. They had kind of an abundance. I'll show you a little closer shot here. They just had an abundance of them. And I said, oh, I'm teaching a class. Maybe you can hook a sister up. And I actually didn't say that. They just sent me home with buckets. And I said, I will use these though for a class I'm teaching. So I've got some beautiful tulips. These are woodland hyacinth. These just grow wild in my yard. Aren't they incredible?
Oh my gosh.
They're obviously in the hyacinth family, but I love that they have a mild smell. Hyacinth can be really intense, especially in a bouquet. I do grow hellebore. I put about 50 plants in last year. And so I have some incredible hellebore. The trick with hellebore is to really get it when the seed pod is formed. These will last 3 weeks the way they are. No problems in bouquets. They're so hardy. If you use them earlier in the season, you're going to have some problems, and you can soak them. Just get the whole thing underwater, cut the end and do you can do a little piercing technique where you sort of splice down the side, but you can also just dip the bottoms in boiling water for about 15, 20 seconds. Really powerful hydration technique. It pushes any air bubbles out. I've really rescued and brought back a lot of hellebore that way, where you fully soak and then do that hot water tip, and it will help revive a lot of them. This is ideal though, is when they're on the plant, or you can find that seed pod right here. So that big chunky little fatty there. That's what we want to see. I want to see that seed pod, or the seed pod is fallen. And because this is really this is not the flower, this is the petal. This is kind of the leaf, if you will, the colored part. So these are amazing for bouquets because they're hardy. They have beautiful, small textural blooms. And they're just one of my favorite. I mean, truly all-time favorites. So yes, I did cut the rest of this from my yard. I have some really interesting things blooming and thought, well, I'm going to use what I have. I have this plant called Deutzia. If you ever find this, buy it. Looks similar to pearl bush or a kind of a spirea. This is also bridal veil or spirea here. The bloom on this hasn't opened yet, but what I liked about this is there's repetition. So this is a line flower, right? See, we have a line. If you see the line here, it's called a dynamic line. It bends, it moves, it undulates. This is more of a static line. It's straight up and down. So I have a line, but I have this white that's open and this white that's small. So there's repetition in the size of what we're looking at. That helps create gradation in the design. That helps create fluidity, rhythm, movement. So again, this isn't like, I'm just like in the garden, just like cutting stuff. Like, I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but there is intentionality in every single choice I'm making. I chose to pick this purple because I had these purple tulips, right? I didn't just grab it because I thought it was pretty. There's really intentionality in everything. I chose the lime green hellebore because there's lime green leaves in the Deutzia, right? So there's repetition. I'm looking to strengthen the lime green component in the bouquet. We also have
about what that smaller flower was, not the spirea.
Yeah.
How do you spell that? Or I don't know. Florists aren't good spellers, you know? No.
DEU.
Oh.
Tzia. Deutzia.
Oh.
Z. I'm sorry, T instead of P. So DEU.
Oh, DEZ.
Yeah, Deutzia. Yeah.
We didn't have that in our library. I apologize.
It's not an incredibly common flower, but it is beautiful if you can get it. We cut it. I bought it as a plant, and it's absolutely stunning in bouquets, especially when the blooms open, which we're just a little early. I also, this might be a little bit unusual, but I picked this incredible azalea. I was just in full bloom, and it's so romantic and beautiful. I'm gonna use my left hand to cut that because I've been having a problem with my wrist, but it's just magical. I made a couple bouquets last year with it, and it's very hardy, and I was so impressed by it. Again, repetition. So I needed white to bring and strengthen the white of the spirea. So that's why I chose that. We have some variegated Solomon seal. This is something you can order from a wholesaler. Notice the yellow tip of that green. So that's going to sort of bridge in a little bit of the lime green of this. You can see that they're very similar in tone. Again, I'm looking for repetition. This arc and shape in bouquets is really lovely. It's going to create the extension. It's going to help us create that line, that form around our mass flowers. So lots of line. If you notice what I have pattern here, I have a lot of line, and this is a common thing. If you just use all roses, peonies, and hydrangea, it's hard to get airiness in a bouquet. Is it possible? It is with a distinctive styling. If you want romance and you want extension, we have to use some line or some type of floaters that are going to help us draw the eye up and out more naturally, more gracefully. So I have a little bit of that. And then you guys are not going to believe these. Look at these. Okay. So I know this is a little bit of a pipe dream here. These are bearded iris. I've already wired them on an 18 gauge wire. And I just have to say, I know we're already over time here, but I've waited 3 years for this plant to bloom. And literally today, if this isn't like kismet, I looked out the window and they had opened, and I'm like, I have to use them because they're magic. So they have a very kind of ivory, lime green, white to them. And
they're gorgeous.
Aren't they insane?
So lovely and beautiful. Yes.
Are they totally practical in a bouquet? Maybe not. I think they could be a little fragile. They might break. What I would do is put them in a hydration chamber to try to get the leaves fully hydrated. They just opened, so I think they'd be pretty strong. But aren't they incredible? So we're gonna weave them in today.
They look like a Van Gogh painting, I have to say. Yes, like an art of art. Yes.
really do. And then last but not least, I have a very special surprise. So I grew up on the West Coast. You know, I never saw this outside of a wholesaler, but I have lily of the valley blooming in my yard. You not believe how magical it is for me. I know it's a ditchweed for some of you that grew up on this coast, but I wanted to just demonstrate a little bit. Look at this. I cut all this from my yard yesterday, and I've already pre-wired this so our demonstration would go a little quicker, but I want to show you just a couple of things here. This is why foundational floristry is so important. When you have a unique request like this, or you have a small bloom, a lilac, something that's very frail, something that's very thirsty, and you're working in a very hot area or zone, wiring something actually can create a little pocket, a little water source. So what I've done for my lily of the valley, just for demonstrative,
This is.
yes, thank you. I'm like, where is my piece of cotton under my flood here? I've taken a little piece of I wipe my eye makeup off with this little cotton swab, and I just took a strip of it about 3/4 of an inch, and I took this piece, cut it in half. I dipped it in some water. You can also use an eco-fresh wrap. It holds together a little bit easier, but this works great. If you take these, and this will work on a lot of different types of flowers. I'm going to take my little lily of the valley, remove kind of any excess bulk. I'm always trying to remove
Clean,
bulk.
clean, clean.
Clean, 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 ladies. Clean, 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 and gentlemen, is clean, clean, clean. So excess bulk, we want to remove weight from our flowers as much as we can in bouquet making, so that things are as light as possible for our clients to carry. So I've got these all lined up. I'm going to just literally create a little diaper for some of you parents out there. I'm just wrapping, just like you would an eco-fresh, around the base of this. Okay. And then this is how you can also do a lot of, you can do this with a lot of flowers. It's extra labor, it's extra work, but it really can just add some strength and stability, and a little tiny bit of water source. So I'm using floral tape. This is a stretchy wax-based paper tape that becomes tacky as we pull it. So I'm pulling and wrapping, and I'm going to come up the base and around just a few times to create almost like a little cast for it. You see our little baby cast? Okay, then I'm going to take a wire and wrap it around. For the sake of time, I've already done several. So you can see it doesn't add tremendous weight or bulk, right? That you could barely tell that there's a little wet cotton swab in here. I would also still put these in a hydration chamber. I would make sure that they were sprayed, covered in a paper towel 24 hours. And I would do that actually before I did the diaper, and then they will hold up much better. So the other option is to use a small water tube. So I have a tiny little water tube. I like the ones that taper here, and you can use something like a hyacinth pick, but the better option is to use an actual stem and attach. So I've got my lily of the valley pushed all the way down. We want the stems all the way at the base. So as they drink, they're not going to be sitting out of water. I can take a stem of any kind. I just have a thick, hardy piece of stem from a honeysuckle vine. And I'm just going to tape. I'll do a little tape first to make it a little bit tacky. And then I'm going to tape this almost like a stake to this water tube. I don't prefer this method because I don't want to try to have all that bulk in there. But if you even just have a couple of these peppered in, it won't add an excessive amount. And if you work in a hot area, this may be what you need to do to ensure that something fragile lives. So this is just a technique I wanted to show you. You can see it's covered, and I would go all the way up to the top to secure that. So there's many ways to sort of create some height. These are very short stems, and I want them to float. I want the client to lean down and smell like the divinity of Lily of the Valley. So this is also, if you don't know what the Kate Middleton carried, this is a very expensive, delicate flower. If you scroll back on my Instagram quite a ways back, I did an event years ago for Hermes perfume. They sent me, they had this flower was their primary, and they sent me, I think 700 stems of it, maybe 1,000. We had to make 400 bouquets, so it had to have been more. It must have been 2,000. They sent me so much Lily of the Valley, and it took days and this huge team to make 400 mini Lily of the Valley bouquets. It was the most stressful project ever because we had to water tube them all and then paper wrap them. It was nuts. But it was so cool. It was beautiful. You can go back and see the pictures of the cart we made of all this. So anyway, I wanted to share just a little short technique with you there. We're going to jump in. I'm going to cut a little piece of my Oasis Bind It tape to get started. Again, this is a silicone-based tape. You do not need a lot, maybe 6 to 8 inches. I pull it first to have it out and ready to go. I'm going to actually set it right here on my laptop so I don't fuss with it. It's really incredible because it allows you to move things afterward, but it really secures the bouquet together and without damaging the flowers. That's really the caveat that's important to me. Okay, so that's everything we have. Those are the ingredients. I am going to what I call sort of mise en place my ingredients. So in French cooking, that means everything in its place. And that means that I want to see my ingredients in front of me. I want to have them organized and ready and essentially broken down. So I don't want to be fussing in the middle of the bouquet too much. The way that we assemble quickly is by having our ingredients prepped and broken down in a very quick and usable way. So remember how I talked about how important it was to clean your stems. Well, I don't mean just remove greenery. This process of shaping and editing, a lot kind of like what we do in bonsai or ikebana, I'm examining my ingredients and I'm making a decision right now how I'm going to highlight this piece. This piece on the branch bends to the right. So where I'm going to put it in the bouquet and how I'm going to face it is going to highlight the face rather than the back, right? And this kind of turning of ingredients and moving things around is an important part of the process. So I don't want this excess bulk at the bottom. I've got to sacrifice some of these guys to have clean stems. Generally speaking, your stems are going to be cleaned about 2/3 of the way down, sometimes halfway, sometimes 2/3. It's going to depend on the ingredient that you're using. So I'm cleaning my stems and having them completely ready to go before I begin. So I have some rubber bands here. I'm going to be securing my bouquet together with rubber bands and finishing with tape. This is all we need, just a few little tiny rubber bands here. Okay, let's begin. Wow, time's already up. Just kidding.
Yeah, right.
Like,
credit in this class. So
yeah, I'm going to make this fairly quickly here for the sake of time, but I'm going to just quickly demonstrate. And again, you'll get the video of the freebie that I have for you on walking you through the spiral more intentionally. So you'll have that to be able to reference back to. For today, what I'm going to do is I typically like to start with my largest mass flower. I'm calling this a mass because I'm going to use the larger tulips a little lower. And this bouquet is really going to be very textural, very, lots of small petite things. And I'm going to start the spiral by placing my first stem over, head to the left, stem to the right, pinching with my left thumb because I'm right-handed, and I'm going to rotate this. Now, you might be also classically trained and think, well, that's not how you do it. And I like to tell my students that this is the quick and dirty way. And I'm not teaching this from a classical quarter turn styling because we're not making it round. We're making it all around, but we're actually building a bit of a triangle. And so in order to do this without all the fussing, I need to get enough in my hand to be able to even make some decisions later on. So in order to do that, I need to get the mass of my bouquet in the center. That's what my focus is. I want the meat of it in the center so that it feels balanced. I'm going to get this beautiful chunky bit here in the center and rotate. So every piece I lay in, head to the left, stem to the right, rotate. Head to the left, stem to the right, rotate. So this might feel like a hot mess to you. It always feels like a hot mess to me in the beginning. And the reality is it's not yet time to make important design decisions. I've made them here on the table. I've solved the design problem early on. So I don't have to stress about this part. What I'm doing and what I was alluding to earlier is that what I encourage designers to think about in this early bouquet making stage is to tattoo this somewhere on your mind and studio. You want to get things generally placed. Okay, I'll say it again, generally placed. We're getting things generally placed. Why does this matter? Why is that important? It matters because, again, if you start trying to follow too closely and fuss too much, you're like a dog chasing his tail, right? Like you're just going to end up frustrated and, really just overworking the flowers, straining your hand. It can just cause massive frustration. And so we need to start just getting our material grouped by color, generally placed, get the big fatties in there, get the heavy hitters before we start adding our linear elements. Okay, so I'm going quickly here and I'm covering this in a very sort of quick and dirty way, but this is really important in you designing much more efficiently and utilizing, I have fairly small hands and I'm using kind of chunky tulips, and I can still you can see how narrow that neck is. So no Oasis waterproof tape needed. I'm very easily able to lift and lower, and rotate the whole thing, lift and lower, lift and lower. So when we talk about the answer, we talk about the solution to loose and airy bouquet making, it really comes down to having the flexibility to lift and lower your flowers as you need them. Okay, so I've got the meat right. Here's what I call kind of the meat and potatoes done. Is it perfect? Is it polished? No, it's a hot mess. I just threw everything in there. I got things generally placed, right? Now I can come back into the bouquet, start making some decisions. I can push things down, I can lift them up. And so you see how easily they maneuver, right? I just soften my hand and lift stems. So some of you, I can guess on a call this size, are over grippers, right? You are like death gripping the bouquet. And my tip for you, if you're taking notes or you're just paying attention and listening, is to soften your grip. You're doing immense damage to your tendon in your wrist, elbow, and shoulder by death gripping. That is a crutch for poor technique. You don't need to your bouquet. I can take my whole bouquet and set it down right now. See, free hands. I can stretch. I'm not panicking. There's no panic needed because geometry is at play here, right? No binding technique, nothing. So the power of the spiral, it gives you back the flexibility and the control of being able to tell this bouquet what we're going to do, right? We're in charge. We're the boss. This bouquet is not the boss. We're the boss. Right? And I think sometimes we feel dragged around by our bouquet making process, like, God, it moved and I had it perfect and I didn't want that there. But if we approach this with a lot of flexibility in our hand, in our spirit, we're going to receive a better result because this is a dance, right? I play something, it moves. If I panic and I start to grip, you're overheating the stems, you're overworking your arm. And what will happen is you'll start to slide your hand higher and higher up the stem, creating a chokehold, and you lose all that airiness that you created. So where you place your hand and the softness of your hand makes a huge difference in the overall effect. This takes discipline, awareness, and intentionality. It just does. And it takes practice to go, oh, I'm death gripping, right? And to learn this technique and intuit so much into your hand that it becomes so natural for you to not panic, that I can look at something and say, oh, that's not working. And I rip it out and I pop it over here and I put it over here and put it over here. And there's no drama. There's no drama needed. Okay. So I'm here right now. It's obviously things are shifting. This guy is not where I want him. Okay. I'm not panicking. I'm not ready yet to chase my tail yet until I get a little closer to the end. So I'm going to get in some of these woodland hyacinth. I'm going to cluster them together. And I'm trying to use mostly the tall ones. My little boy actually cut these for me yesterday because I've been having a ton of problems with my hand. Mostly, surprisingly, it's actually computer work that's done to me.
Yeah, right. I'm like, you got the flower part down, not injuring yourself at typing. So I apologize, you guys, that you're on your computers too much.
Oh man, no. I mean, it's like most of my work is administrative now, and emails and phone calls and meetings and stuff like that. So it's really kind of funny how things have come back around to be like, oh, now it's the computer that's getting my hand.
Well, it probably makes this part of your job a lot more enjoyable because I feel like when you don't spend all of your time in the design room, it's like a pleasure when you're finally getting to design if you're organized and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did freelance. I freelance very rarely, just mostly as a favor. I was a professional freelancer for years, and that's really where I learned production, high volume production. and how to work quickly and get the look that, of whoever I was working for. But, working as a freelancer, it's a grind. And I was doing some work for a friend recently at a huge event out here in Virginia and just helping out. And, I got to make their bouquets, and it was like, oh man, this is, it's different teaching versus, the actual process. But, I made them so quickly, and the team was kind of like, wow, that was really fast. And it was like, yeah, there's a really fast way to do this, and I can teach you. And I ended up teaching the crew that I was with how to do this, because they're traveling freelancers, and a lot of them didn't know how to do this. So we did a little mini bouquet boot camp right there at the end of the event. It was really fun. Okay, so I've got some texture in there. I'm clustering small things together. That is helping create more impact. So we're moving away from focal flowers in design. We're doing more focal area. And so by using smaller textures clustered together, I'm creating more of a focal area. It's a denser patch for your eye to sort of rest. And also I'm going to bridge that color across the bouquet, and that is going to allow the eye to travel through and around. So again, I'm moving quick here. I know we're of course way over time. I warned Kareen that I am a talker, so sorry.
Yeah, we spent 8 hours together on that brunch. So
fully warned. Okay, I'm going to start laying in some of my line flowers on the perimeter. As I go, I do cut. This preserves my hand. This also allows me to really keep the bouquet physically balanced as I'm building it. I'm going to start getting in some of my beautiful little wired bits here, and my cutting of these I won't do with my nice Ohana Japanese shears. I'll do with these clippers that I have here, but I'm going to start layering these into the spiral. I'm coming directly in, always into the spiral, always into the spiral. And this is going to ensure that my stems stay tidy, that the handle stays small, and that I'm really able to, make sure that everything isn't being crushed. That's what I see a lot when stems start getting crisscrossed. You really can end up crushing your flowers, your stems. And I have some, some juicy sort of things in here in terms of the woodland hyacinth, tulips, things that break easily. And so I'm still not fussing. Do you see that? I'm still not fussing. I'm going to come up a little higher than the base of the stem and trim off these wires here just a bit. So they'll still be included in the binding point, but I won't have to chop through with my good shears.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, Amy. It's coming together.
Thank you. Well, we're not done yet. I'm going to try to whip this together real quick. So I'm adding a lily of the valley on the opposite side. So we have a dense patch and a little echo on the other side. I'm going to lay the rest of my line flowers in here, and I'm going to create a little bit of a triangulation. You can go as asymmetrical as you want, but notice there's a pattern placement here. There really may seem like I'm just manhandling this and throwing it together, but there really is a process here in place around creating. Oh, wow, it just started pouring. I was like, what's that sound? Oh my God, it's like pouring. Sorry.
I'm glad you pulled those bearded iris, because they would be destroyed right now.
I have to say, I honestly was like, I heard it was going to rain today, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to rescue them. And I'm so glad I did now, because
they're so happy to be amongst friends.
Yes, I'm going to put them right here for us to look at while I do this. Okay, last little bits. So I saved some little shorties for the end. I have some shorter bits of my hellebore. I have some shorty hyacinth, a couple of little short of the lily of the valley. And I'm just going to really start to finish out the edges. And I talk obviously a lot more about this in my class, but what I'm doing is kind of what I call like a collaring effect, or like a reverse implied line, which means that I'm going to sort of blend and bridge because of the way I build this. It's not round like a dome. It's more of a concave. So because of that, I end up with a little bit of a naked neck. And because of that, I really want to make sure that no matter how she holds it, it should be beautiful from all sides. It's my least favorite thing, and I'm sorry if you build bouquets this way, if this is a offensive comment, but I hate when I see these really flat two-sided bouquets, because the problem with building bouquets that way is she is busy. She's not thinking about, oh, that's right. Amy told me to make sure to hold it this way. That is too much pressure and stress to put on a client, in my personal opinion. I'm sorry if that's not popular, but that should not be something she has to think about. She should be able to hold it in any direction. And that bouquet should be able to be photographed beautifully. It should not have a front and a back, in my opinion. I just think that's asking for trouble when you have a bride who's just busy. You know, she wants to be focused on what she's focusing on and not.
Well, she's never going to hold it the right way. And you're going to see all those pictures and you're going to be like, why did she not do it right?
100%. So here's where we are. I'm going to go ahead and layer these in. Now, pokey pokey is fine as long as you pokey pokey into the spiral. Okay. If I just ram this thing down, I'm now going opposite of the spiral, which is going to create counter pressure, pinching, etc. at my binding point, which I'm protecting this binding point. I tell the students all the time, this handle should be just as beautiful as your bouquet, right? The mechanics of our bouquets should look just as beautiful. One of my greatest compliments are when students say, oh my gosh, I delivered this bouquet to a bride and she was like, oh, it's so light. Because they've been bridesmaids, they've been clients, and they're like, oh, I gotta carry this like weight down the aisle, right? And they're like, oh, it's so light, right? Part of that is ingredient selection, part of it is how we build. So I'm gonna float, because these guys are so chunky. This is called a form flower, when you have something that is not a round, that's not a line, and it's not a filler, it's called a form. And my little caveat for this is the form flowers float. So I'm not going to ram this thing deep down into this bouquet. It would damage the petals, and it would also diminish the beauty. And so I want to float them. I'm piercing into the spiral, through the spiral. I can also just open my hand, lay it into where I want it, and then close my hand. That's another very quick and easy way to get something where I want it. When I have two very large things, I only have two of them, I'm going to cluster them together, typically on the opposite side of a dense area of that same color. That's a lot of words. Basically, I'm always looking to create pockets of color instead of this sort of polka dotted effect. Now, that's a design choice. That's not a everybody must do that. That's an Amy thing or whatever, if you do the same kind of style as I do. So that's an intentional choice, but we're going to finish her up here real quick. I'm just going to add a couple of little coloring elements.
Hey, Amy, we have a question.
Yeah,
Rachel of Norton would like to ask, and how much would you charge for a bouquet like this?
Oh my God, it's priceless.
Yeah, right. We can maybe recipe it out later for you guys if that's something. Maybe you can photograph it and send it as a picture. But she pulled most of the stuff, or a lot of the stuff, from her garden. So those things you just can't buy. You can't buy those bearded iris anywhere. Maybe you can. I don't know.
Oh yeah. Mayish carries them. You can buy them from Mayish, but they take time to open. I would recommend like an amaryllis or a lily of some kind if you want a large form flower in there. I love using wired amaryllis in my bouquets.
Atalaya looks like same kind of roughly.
Yeah. So we've got sort of the line elements. For the sake of time, I'll wrap this guy up, but I'm just going to finish with a couple of these little bits around the outside because they're short. Notice that my binding point hasn't changed. The neck hasn't changed. Here's the deal with pricing. And I tend to not laugh, but at the same time, the reality is the pricing, we live in a market that has variables. Your overhead, what you pay to run your business, what you need to make, with the market that you're in, how competitive. One little guy slipped out of the spiral, so I'm just fixing him and course correcting there before I give this a chop, is gonna vary, which is why there are industry standards, but I think here's my best advice for pricing. You must understand the numbers to running your business. You need to know what your costs are to run your business. What do you need to earn every month to be profitable? What do you need to make every month? You have to do the math. I'm the last one who enjoys doing it, but if I don't know what I need to make, we run rampant with over buying. We run rampant with our labor costs. We got to know our costs. It's just really tough to price our work without knowing that. Okay. A quick rubber band. There's a trick. I show this on my Instagram as well, but I'm coming up the stem to the binding point. Really important at the binding point. I hear this all the time. I go to bind it and it changed. I go to bind it and the design changed. And the reality is the trick to this is not excessive use of binding. If you're using a big old piece of tape and you're doing it too low or too high, it changes the entire shape of the bouquet. So this rubber band, I learned this from Ariella Shazar years ago at a workshop, totally changed my life. I credit her in full for that. I'm like, oh my God, how have I not known how to do that? So I can come in here, lift and lower, and really sort of flesh out some of these areas a little bit more. But for the sake of time, I'll leave her that. What we have though is a nice, clean, tidy binding point. And that's what we want. I'm 5'2", I'm pretty small. I can really, with my middle finger, I can almost touch, but I can get this thing really, really, secured and use my binded tape here.
It's stunning, Amy.
Oh,
all kinds of comments. Beautiful. So beautiful. And someone has a question. Was the binding tape, was it Oasis brand, or where can I get that?
It's only Oasis makes it. It's a silicone tape that comes in green and clear. And you probably need to ask your wholesaler to order it for you, or you can find it on Amazon, but it's really expensive on Amazon. It's like 40 bucks.
We have it in our hard goods area, because I know we have Oasis's product line there, but we'll put it together.
Yeah. Okay, so that's done. And we could have gone maybe even a little faster, but I was trying to talk through it. But I can easily add, right? I can take this little guy, I can literally push him right between the binded tape and the bouquet. That's really incredible to be able to do that and add something at the neck of the bouquet very easily without having to add more layers of tape. So that tape really works like a large rubber band. It's really incredible. And again, you don't need to be doing 10 pieces of it, not just because you're wasting money, but you're over tightening the bouquet. You just need a couple pieces. This is very secure. And I just did a 6-inch piece. So, it's in there, it's really holding together.
Wow.
Cool.
Great. How would you suggest transporting that?
Yeah, you can transport them in a vase, inside of a box or inside of another box. Bottoms of, you can use flower boxes and cut X's in them. I have a whole transportation section in my course that I go over on how to pack and deliver and zhuzh and make sure that the bouquet stays the way you designed it to the delivery. But that's an important part of it, right? Is ensuring that it gets there in one piece. So I always transport in water. You can use eco-fresh wraps if you're in a very hilly area, instead of, sloshing around with water. I've done that before too. I've worked in a lot of destination work and like, and you're like, okay, well, we don't want these bouquets sloshing around. So that can work really well. Yeah.
Deb says she just found out that she's a choker.
I get it. Listen, the first step is admitting that we have a problem, right? So overgraining. Yeah, I do cover packaging your bouquets and ribboning and wrapping and different binding technique, because there's a lot of binding techniques. This is just one of the ways that I bind bouquets, but there's a whole methodology. And then in the hands-on, we actually practice them all together. So I cut you like 6 or 8 different types of binding techniques, and we actually practice every single one of them. And we're sitting there with tape, with wire, with twine, and we're doing all of them. So you get to practice those hands-on in the hands-on course.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you have a giveaway, don't you? A gift at the end.
Oh, yes. Okay. So everybody on the call is going to get one of our freebies, which I think is awesome. And it is our, I wish I had it in front of me. I was supposed to have it here. And I'm like, wait, where did it go?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't you. It was me. I was supposed to get it from my assistant. Okay. So we are going to give you all my guide to all of my favorite flowers and foliages for Lucenary bouquet making. So really Lucenary design. This is a collection of just all the things that are my favorites that work well for this style. So Jutsia, Hellebore, things like this, they're all in there, and they're broken down by line, form, mass, and filler. And my hope for you is, if from this short lesson, but also from my free class that I hope you guys all watch, because you can learn more about how I order my flowers and how I think about things categorically, is that to think about your flowers in shape, size, and color more than anything else, more than variety, more than fragrance, more than even price, is that, we're in a season where our flowers have never cost more money ever in the history that I know of floral design, maybe the tulip era of the whatever 1800s.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they've never cost more. And with that, we're having to get really creative around our stem selection and substitutions. And so the more flexibility we can have in how we approach our ordering, looking at size, shape, and color instead of, well, I have to have these and I have to have tulips. And what did this is kind of in part why I didn't give them a recipe, is I said, well, I'm going to cut things from my yard. I have a ton of stuff, beautiful stuff blooming. But the reality is, how many of us are going to put lily of the valley and two-bearded iris in a bouquet? Almost none of us. So what my takeaway for you, hopefully, is that you're seeing a methodology, that you're seeing that there's a process where certain things float, certain things are tucked deeper. There's a process here. It's not magic. I'm not just so talented and other people aren't. There's a process that I take in building, from mass to form to smaller mass to line. And that methodology has everything to do with what you order. And so in looking at your ingredient section, when you're using details, when you're sitting down to build your orders, looking at the shape and the form and the colors of what you have and how that's going to be built is going to make your profit go up, and it's going to make your execution easier because you've solved that puzzle of how that's going to be arranged earlier on.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. And I'm looking forward to like maybe getting a collection of Amy's favorite line forms, her like form flowers, and just all that. I think it'd be super helpful as people are going in. They can just go into your collection and see everything. And then maybe you'll pop in a few of those pictures of those bearded iris for us. We have a comment from Jill Heaton. It says, there's also a huge difference in where in the country and size of distributor. Example, white carnations from Kohler and Dram in Minnesota is 54 cents a stem versus Pennock was 97 cents. I'm in Florida, so I have to look all over the country to order or without shipping. So yeah, you got to really put in the work and the time to kind of know who you trust as far as your vendors are. We've got a lot of really great partners that we've established over the last little bit. So we're hoping that you guys check out their product lines too, because I know that they're really trying to be competitive on price, especially one of our new Jet Fresh. So please go check out their products too. So thank you, Amy. This has been so wonderful. I'm not sure if there's any other questions anybody wants to ask, or but it's been just a true pleasure. I have just enjoyed getting to know you over these last several months. And Amy came to the Congressional Action Days, which was a really fun event, and I know she's going to be at Team Flower coming up here later this next month, so I know that's a big deal. And also, are you going to be at AIFD?
I will. Yep, I'll be at AIFD this year. I'm helping out. I have a good friend teaching. Susan McCleary is a good friend of mine. She's presenting, so I'm going to be back of the house helping her out with some stuff and just having fun. So I'm excited. I love AIFD Symposium every year I go. It's an incredible experience if you've never been. There's an incredible lineup of designers teaching this year that I'm just like front row, like with my notepad, like I just can't wait to soak it all up. So I'm excited to be there.
Yeah. And you know, everybody is a student and a teacher. So I love that you're continuing even your education or just getting more, ideas. We're really excited. Details is the procurement software. So we're helping with like all the programs. So if you guys are going to this AIFD this year, we feel like really specially helping it be successful. And also, so thank you guys. This has really been wonderful. We're going to share it with all of our members, including the gift and also a replay of this. If there's any questions or feedback you guys have for Amy or for my team, please let us know, because we really want to bring wonderful content to you guys. So this just helps with you being one of our featured educators, Amy. It was really inspiring and really, you did a beautiful job. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you everyone who came. And I know we're all like a little Zoom like heavied out, but I hope this was impactful for you. I hope you took some bits and tidbits away without kind of fire hosing you. I encourage you to go learn more in my free class. There's so much information that I put in there around bouquet making that I think is going to make a big difference if you struggle with making bouquets. And let me know, send me a DM if this was useful to you. I love hearing from people directly as well about how some of this education has impacted you in any way. So appreciate you having me. It's been such an honor. I feel honored to be asked to come to this space. And I look forward to seeing you, especially this year, many times. And if some of you are at some of these events, please come and say hi. I would love to say hi.
Absolutely. Yeah, we love that. And we love the feedback too. So if there's anything that you heard or something you want more of, or other educators you would really enjoy hearing from, please send that our way. We loved when our florists communicate with us. That's the only way that we can read your mind, is for you to tell us what you guys are wanting. So hopefully you guys found this beneficial. And to Amy and everybody else, have a great rest of the week. I hope your spring events go off flawlessly, and send us pictures of what you guys do so we can see and we can share and be your support system. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Yay. All right. Bye everybody. Thank you.